In fact, I came up with a little prayer. I call it my conflict serenity prayer. You know, God grant me the serenity, etc. I said, so God grant me the fortitude or the strength to deal with those inevitable conflicts. Humility to avoid those that I can walk away from. And the wisdom to know the difference.
The start of an argument is like a leak, so stop it before real trouble breaks out. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 14. Pastor, you know, for many of us, when we think of conflict, we always imagine that it's only when there is a real big conflict that there is trouble. We never look at the small, nagging and recurring conflicts as a problem.
That is true. And that is why Song of Solomon chapter 2 says, beware of the little foxes that ruin the vine. What he is saying is, usually we ignore little issues, not recognizing that the confluence of many little things become a big thing. I would even suggest, Joel, that many marriages begin to die long before that big adultery or that big issue. It's those daily irritations that are unresolved, like a stone in your shoe that you can't walk, and after a while you just want to get rid of that shoe. So Solomon's words here are very significant. He says it's like a little leak, chip, chip, chip. So stop it. Which tells me that while conflict is inevitable, not every conflict is inevitable. Are you still with me? While conflict is inevitable, not every conflict is inevitable. I think that is what Solomon is saying here.
Yeah, and in a sense then, we have to always be assessing the level of conflict and its implications. Because I think ultimately this ability to judge which conflicts are inevitable from those that are not is really a consciousness of what the implications of resolving it and not resolving it are.
In fact, I came up with a little prayer. I call it my conflict serenity prayer. You know, God grant me the serenity, etc. I said, so God grant me the fortitude or the strength to deal with those inevitable conflicts. Humility to avoid those that I can walk away from. And the wisdom to know the difference.
That is perfect.
Yes. That should be the prayer of every spouse, every family, every person who deals with other people. Grant me strength to deal with those inevitable conflicts. Humility to walk away from those I can avoid, but especially wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. And since we are focusing on the family, Pastor, so let's maybe paint this picture a bit more clearly about how these small conflicts just emerge and exist within the family space.
You've heard me say this many times. Put any two human beings in the same room, and eventually there will be conflict. And what do we mean by conflict? Conflict simply means when my desires clash
with mine.
Yes. When my rights
clash with mine.
Yes. That's where really conflict comes in, when we don't see eye to eye. And since conflict is inevitable, that somehow my right may conflict with yours, or my vision, my perception with yours, it means then that in any family, husband and wife, 2, 3 children, 5 people living in a home, there will be some of this conflict. So conflict simply means our rights are clashing, our perspectives are clashing, our desires are clashing. How do we work this out? Conflict being inevitable means then that we need to find ways to resolve conflicts so that instead of becoming a curse and the end of our relationship, it becomes a blessing, because conflict is a blessing.
Yeah, and maybe for those listeners who have not followed us for long, episode 47 actually, in there we dealt with in more depth this idea of conflict. Yes. And really tried to develop a good framework on how to deal with it. And it's interesting, Pastor, because after reading that Proverbs in chapter 17, the Proverbs chapter 19 verse 11 says this: it's wise to be patient and show what you are like by forgiving others.
Yes. Or let me take it from another version, the New Revised Standard Version. Those with good sense, are slow to anger. And it is their glory to overlook an offense, to look the other way, to walk away. So it comes back to that serenity prayer, the wisdom to know the
deal-
difference.
yeah.
I tell people, since every conflict is not inevitable, decide which hill you're going to die on. You know, some people believe, I have to defend myself, come with me. I have to always be the one right. I have to show that you were wrong. And Solomon is saying, no, there's no need for that. Decide which hill you're going to die on. And it is wise to know when to overlook an offense, to just turn away from something. For instance, Cynthia's missing her keys. And she comes, where are my keys? I said, I don't know. You see, somebody's always moving my stuff. Are you sure you didn't move my keys? I said, no. At that moment, I realized, okay, she's just irritable because she can't find the keys. It doesn't really mean much. Hey, hear what? I'll help you look for it. Where did you last leave it? We looked for it. It's found. What did we just do?
We resolved that conflict.
Yeah. We avoided one actually by me overlooking her outburst, and vice versa, as the case might be. So what Solomon is saying, a wise person recognizes not every issue is worth me bristling about. And how could you say that? You know, since when have I ever moved your stuff? And you'll hide stuff too. And that's when we have an escalation of conflict.
Yeah.
But we should always seek to
De-escalate.
de-escalate.
And this can eat away at a marriage, because it seems to me then the repeated occurrence of these small situations, and if you keep making them big issues, over time they wear you out.
Of course. In other words, not every tire that gets damaged is because you hit into a culvert and it rips that tire open. You've seen that sometimes on the highway. A tire just pops, pow, and it's tat. That's dangerous. But most tires, it's just that little nail, and the air leaks out gradually. Many marriages are like that. Those little nails, those little pricks, those little irritations that keep sapping the energy out of the relationship. So whenever they are facing any major conflict, there is no buffer, no shock absorber, so to speak, to deal with it. And that is when people just want to walk away. So you are right. The daily irritations, the little foxes, ruin the vine.
And that's why you keep saying that even in marriages, we should not be overly put so much focus on the big conflicts only. We should always also be aware as well of the small conflicts, because they are ultimately what lead up to these big moments that can be very divisive.
To every large conflict, adultery, spending money badly, not sticking to the budget, mother-in-law troubles, children disciplinary troubles. You notice all these big issues? There are about 20 little conflicts, irritations. You peed on the toilet seat and you didn't raise it up. You left the toothpaste, without the cap on. You came in and you dropped your shoes by the front door and I have to pick it up. You name it. These irritations. And so this lesson, this episode, we are looking at conflict in general, and also those larger issues that can come up that really threaten a marriage. But for now, let's remember this. There will always be conflict. It's inevitable. Not every conflict is inevitable. So wisdom will tell us what to overlook and move away from. And yet, grace and strength will tell us when we have to stand up and confront, because avoiding conflict is not good either. So Joel, what do you think is the difference between walking away or overlooking the offense on the one hand, but avoiding conflict on the other?
I mean, to me, they almost seem the same. Avoiding and walking away seems to point to the same kind of response. It's a response that is not dealing with the issue, or at least facing the issue.
You sure with that? No, I guess what I'm saying is it sounds the same, but it's not the same. Because one is built on wisdom and one is built on fear. Stay with me. One of them is built on
wisdom,
and the other
fear.
On fear. Which one do you think is built on wisdom?
Walking away as far as you can.
Yes. In other words, it is saying this is not something worth arguing about. This is not an issue that really matters.
And it seems to me, Pastor, even as we talk of wisdom, because wisdom is such an abstract terminology for a lot of us, it's really a sense of maturity and the ability to recognize the moment for what it is.
Yes.
Because, when you talk of wisdom, people may push that out and say, I am not wise, or that's something speaking to a different group of people. Maybe people who have white hair, and not people like me. But really, it's a sense of maturity.
Maturity, and you said recognizing the moment. I really like that. Recognizing the moment. In other words, at this moment, with this situation we're dealing with, is it really something that is worth?
Exactly. And it's, for me personally, with Holly, that has been something that I've grown into, to really navigate different situations that can easily, take us down a path of arguing or debating or getting into a back and forth, and saying, is it worth me engaging in this, or should I cede ground for a conversation down the line that I think is more meaningful?
Yes. So that is walking away from Proverbs 19:11. The wise are slow to anger and they overlook the offense. They forgive.
Yeah.
Avoiding conflict is built on fear. I'm afraid to stand up for my rights. I'm afraid if I stand up, he may become abusive and may hit me. He may become violent. She may walk out on me. I'm afraid. So I pretend conflict doesn't exist, or I deal with situations that need to be dealt with, but I absorb it into my being and I become stressed out and anxious and nervous and that kind of stuff, because I'm afraid to stand up to the bully, afraid to stand up because I'm afraid my marriage may be destroyed, as the case might be. That is a no-no.
So that's like not being assertive enough.
Right. So and we're going to come to that in a moment, about assertiveness versus aggressiveness. But before we do that, what we're simply saying is there are two ways to deal with conflict. Walk away from the unnecessary ones, but confront the necessary ones.
And know the difference.
And also, never let fear be the greatest factor in your relationship. Fear that causes you to avoid conflict.
Because over the long term, that may lead to dysfunction. The very thing you're trying to...
It does.
It does.
Dysfunction.
The very thing you're trying to avoid in the immediate context.
Yes. With that said, we recognize that every marriage, every relationship, every conflict has to be dealt with negotiation and compromise. There is no marriage, Joel. There is no marriage that has lived for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in which there has not been a lot of compromise and negotiation.
In fact, one of my friends really does not favor the word compromise. He says accommodation, because the argument is compromise means you're losing something, while accommodation means you're adding something onto your options, really.
I can live with that. Not necessarily the most comfort, but I can live with it.
Yeah.
In the sense that sometimes you do have to lose something.
Yeah.
We talk about win-win.
Yeah.
Win-win simply means I don't get all I want, you didn't get all you want. But at the end of the day, we both got something. And sometimes, maybe you're right. Because sometimes what we both got, it was totally different from what we started off
with
expecting to get.
Yes.
So, yeah. That makes sense too.
So it's really accommodating the other one and their interests and their desires and their preferences.
Yes. And even accommodating a new option.
Right.
So I wanted to go to my family for Thanksgiving. You wanted to go to your family. So that's a conflict.
Right.
It could be a big conflict or a small conflict depending on our attitudes and how we deal with it. If I'm aggressive, stubborn, it's going to be
a big conflict.
A big conflict.
Yeah.
If I'm humble, if I'm discerning, if I'm flexible, we could walk away from this winning. So I want to go here, you want to go there.
Yeah.
Compromise or accommodation, I guess, which I like it thinking about it, says, okay, let's negotiate. Last year we went by your family, it wasn't really the best holiday. This year we were planning to go to my family, and you really don't like my aunt because she doesn't get along with you, but what about if you go to Miami instead and spend the weekend at Disney World? Hey, that's not a bad option. So we have both accommodated a new perspective that wasn't at the beginning, and we both win. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to deal with my family who make your life miserable. I don't have to deal with your aunt who really aggravates my spirit, and we both end up having a wonderful weekend. So negotiation
and accommodation
of a new perspective, where I consider your feelings and your rights, you consider my feelings and my rights, and we both leave getting something from it.
Yeah, and it's really the reason why I like the word accommodation. Even before I make the point I was trying to make, Pastor, is it's saying that there's room here for me to take more, and I'm working from a place of sufficiency of space, because when you're always jostling, it's like there's a limitation to your options. You're always working from a place of a lack. There's sort of you are running low on your options.
Negotiation, you said?
No, when you're compromising, really. When
Okay.
you're working from a place of insufficiency of some sort, while accommodation opens the field up. And maybe this is a lot more philosophical, but it's basically the sense that accommodation creates the sense that there's room for me to take your considerations in.
In other words, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying a person whose mindset is compromised may somehow be internalizing the sense that I'm losing something, I'm giving up something,
Yeah.
I'm not really getting what I wanted,
Right.
just for peace.
Yes.
While the person who has a mindset of accommodation is saying, hey, there's much more space in me to deal with other issues, other
Right.
possibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm not really losing anything. I'm gaining a new perspective of this situation.
Yeah, precisely.
And it's like maybe avoiding and walking away from conflict. It looked the same on the outside, but maybe internally, what's happening in my spirit and mind makes the difference. So I will buy it.
Yeah, and I think ultimately wisdom really shows you that there are more options, because again, the nature of these small recurring conflicts is that they're always going to come around. You're going to have your day on the platform. So it's always knowing what I have space, I have option, I have time, I have another chance. Because even from a perspective of energy, Pastor, these small niggling recurring conflicts can wear you out.
They do wear you out. Speak to any wife, Joel. Maybe even your own wife. Speak to my wife. And you'll realize that the things that really do irk and make you feel, oh man, it's to deal with those same little irritations day in and day out. Which is where negotiation comes in. Assertiveness comes in. Now, some people mistake assertive with aggressive, but Joel, help us here.
And that's a very important distinction, because I think assertive is really being able to express yourself without a sense of fear or a sense of threat. You're really expressing yourself in a way that is
non-threatening. Yes. Assertiveness, you're correct, simply says, I will tell you upfront in a clear, non-threatening manner what I desire.
Yeah.
How I feel about something. So at least you know. You're not batting in the dark.
Yeah.
And many conflicts, Joel, come about because of a lack
of assertiveness.
Yes. I really didn't know you didn't like this. I really didn't know. But if you tell me, at least I know.
And I think in the marital space, there's assumption that they should know. I mean, he's my wife, he's my husband. He should sense, he should know what I want. He should know how I want it,
That's one of the great problems that marriages have suffered since Adam and Eve, I think, a woman thinking the man should know. Well, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a mind reader. Tell me, don't have me guessing. You've seen it sometimes. Are you upset? No, I'm fine. You sure? You don't look, and your wife won't tell you, but you know she's upset because everything tells you but she won't tell you finally, what did I do wrong? You should know. Oh, I don't know. Just tell me. So you are right. Assertiveness says, if I'm upset, I'll tell you, no, sweetheart, I'm not happy because last night you promised ABC and you didn't. Or yesterday when I asked you, you didn't. Assertive.
And it reminds me of my little son, because he sulks whenever he doesn't get his way. And we have to really try to figure out what exactly icked you, what kept you angry, But I think part of maturity, again, this is what comes around, is being able to state out your position clearly, concisely, and in an unthreatening way. That's a sign of maturity as well.
So lack of assertiveness creates conflict. Aggressiveness exacerbates conflict, makes it worse, and can even create two. So while assertive means I'm confident, I'm upfront, I'm non-threatening, aggressive means I'm hostile, I'm violent,
I'm threatening.
I'm threatening, I'm offensive even.
Mm-hmm.
And we all will respond negatively to that. So in a marriage, in a family setting, we need to recognize being assertive means I will tell you in a calm, confident manner, because I believe you love me, I love you, we both are on the same team, and you need to know. So
That's
it's not
important.
threatening.
Yeah.
Aggressive means I'm reactive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm violent. I'm always assuming that you are doing this deliberately, that we are not on the same team.
Yeah.
I have to get my rights and take my space. So I'm coming at you violently and with hostility. Do not mistake aggressiveness with assertiveness. Again, they look alike.
Yeah.
They look alike because aggressive persons are up front. They come and they tell you in your face. And assertive persons up front and they tell you to your face. But it's not the same.
Yeah. I like the phrase you just introduced. We are on the same team. I think it's such an important mindset to bear within a family space, even when you're dealing with your spouse. Knowing that we are on the same team, even as we work out some of these kinks, we're on the same team. You are not my enemy. I'm not trying to destroy you and win you over. I'm trying to see how can we make the most solid team.
And many times, Joel, when I counsel couples, maybe the wife, maybe the husband, what you hear is, I am here on myself, he is there for himself. You don't get that sense that we're on the same team. And so we are seeking to save our marriage. Usually it's, I'm seeking to get my rights. I'm seeking for him to understand my feelings because he doesn't seem to care. You hear that a lot. He doesn't care. So what we are suggesting is for every couple to recognize we are on the same team. My success
is your success.
My grief
is your grief.
Together we will fly. Together because we are united in this marriage. So we are saying that conflicts come. Once they appear, we have to negotiate. It's the best way to begin to de-escalate, negotiate. Or sometimes we have to simply try to resolve it because when we try to see what we could accommodate, sometimes we can't really accommodate both persons at the same time. It may mean I may have to defer my desires for next year. Okay, we are going by your family this year, but next year it's going to be mine. Sometimes I have to give up something. But it's not from a position of weakness. It's from a position of we're on the same team. Sometimes I have to give you, sometimes you give me, but at the end we are both winning. We are both going forward. Negotiation simply says, let's see how we can come through this in the best way possible. Conflicts that are left hanging create resentment. That's
true.
Sounds...
Yeah, that's actually very true and very real in marriage, and I see it even for us. There are many instances where over time you realize you can't even have a simple conversation because you never resolved something last week or last month, and now what used to be an easy conversation is very hard because there is that residue or that backdrop of that unresolved conflict.
In other words, last week's issue is feeding into today's little issue and making it
huge, right?
Yes. I've also found out, which brings me to this point where the Bible says, be angry
and sin not.
Yes. A lot of people, they don't like to equate Christianity with anger, but the scripture is saying, be angry, but don't sin. And he goes on to say, do not let the sun do what?
Go down
on your wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he would make that statement?
I think we are created to have that kind of negative passion, if I may frame him that way. A passion that seeks to resolve, to make things right, or at least to reinstate things, to bring a sense of justice and restore things.
Be angry and sin not. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Are they connected? Those two statements?
Yes, because I think anger over time, and that is not used for a purpose at a given point, becomes resentment, becomes hate, becomes all those other things that now are seen in themselves.
Perfectly said. It putrefies. The longer I am angry, the longer I am angry.
Mm-hmm.
Anger tends to get bigger with time. And so the issue today might have been 1 centimeter, But if I don't deal with that anger, and I begin to, my stepmother used to say, stew in your own fat. So it begins to marinate.
Morph into something else.
Yes. That is why there's some people today who hate people, and you can't get from them a really concrete reason why. And even when they try to bring all the issues, you're listening and saying, but I don't see how this came to this. You're laughing. It doesn't ring a bell.
It's so real. I mean, I'm laughing because it's true.
Yeah. And you're saying, I don't see how this could lead to this. It is because anger left unchecked morphs the situation into something bigger. And you begin to attach everything onto this one little issue that could have been resolved. So when the apostle says, don't let the sun go down in your wrath, he's simply saying, get it over with. Deal with it immediately. Deal with it when it comes up.
Yeah.
I also tell my daughter and my children this. She was asking me, she said, Dad, how do I know if I should deal with an issue? Remember you were talking about wisdom to know the difference. Because I'm not sure if it's something worth dealing with, but yet I feel I should. So I told her, give yourself 2 or 3 days. Right? If by the second or third day, you can't even remember, or when you look back at the issue, it doesn't evoke any emotion, then it wasn't worth dealing with. In fact, that is my modus operandi, Joel. I never get angry immediately. In other words, I'm always smiling. My wife sometimes thinks, why are you smiling? Why are you laughing? This is something serious. I said, no, that is my escape valve. That is the way I deal with issues.
You're taking pressure.
Yes. I take it coming at me, and my smile allows it to dissipate.
Subside, yeah.
Yes. Because now I want to be able to deal with the issue itself, not with my own crazy emotions. Other people have different ways. But the point is this. I would take a day or two. Sometimes by the second day, I have to work up that anger. By the third day, I have to try to be angry. And I realized it really wasn't a big deal.
Pastor, maybe then you're speaking to an even deeper aspect here of how we that we should develop as people in relationships, a sense of self-awareness. Because you're saying that you try to build yourself in a way where you move from your emotions and see the issue.
Yes.
Right? And even when you leave this issue for the next 2-3 days, you're trying to feel, is it really worth it?
Yes. That's exactly right. So I told her that. I said, but if during those 2 days or 3 days, you go to bed with it, you get up, and every time you think about this thing the person said or did, you feel that cutting in your gut, that's nothing in your spirit, then you have to deal with it.
Yes. But there has to be a self-awareness, and I thought that's a point maybe you should speak to in terms of even how you personally deal. You have said you deal with your conflicts, where you develop this sense of, a good-natured sense so that you can help the emotions subside and deal with the issue. For me, that speaks to self-awareness, knowing that my emotions can cloud how I deal with issue. And for a lot of people, and in fact, that's what happens, is the anger is so much that it just clouds everything, and now you're able to you want to burn down the whole house because of this small issue.
Yeah, and the 2 occasions I can consciously recall when I got angry, they were almost life-shattering situations. I would have never been a pastor today if that guy had died. I got so angry. I sent the guy to the hospital for 3 days. In that anger, I was willing to fight everyone. I was going to beat everyone in that room, and somebody went to the hospital for 3 days. And I almost was expelled from the seminary. But people knew I was a good guy, and I said, okay, give him a chance. But I had a lot of time to reflect on it. What a moment of uncontrolled anger could cause someone to do. And I realized you can't allow people to yank your chains and skip, or allow yourself to become angry.
To be easily triggered.
Yes. And what worked for me is to see the funny in everything. Sometimes my wife says it's inappropriate because I'm laughing at things she thinks I should be all, but I see the funny in even the worst things. I see the funny in it, the incongruent. So by laughing or smiling, it just dissipates all the negative energy. So now I could deal with what is. Now, after this, I may think about it and say, I don't like what Joel said. I really think he was being disrespectful to me and he wasn't being considerate. And I go to bed, I go to 1 day, 2 days. If by the third day, I'm not feeling any of that anger, any of that I leave it alone. It means it really wasn't worth it. But if at the third day, I realize, no, then I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to come to you and talk to you about it because I realize it is an issue that affected me and needs to be dealt with.
But then let's go back to anger when how it can be used instantaneously to resolve a problem.
Right. Now, anger is a mechanism God gave us to deal with injustice. You with me still?
Mm-hmm.
So we said grief was a mechanism to deal with loss.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is a mechanism that we have received in this sin-cursed world to deal with injustice. In other words, what anger says is, I have value. Do not devalue me. Do not shunt my rights away. I have worth. Consider me. Don't abuse me. I'm standing up for myself or for others. That is what anger is. So when the apostle said, be angry, Ephesians 4:26, be angry, he's saying it is okay to be angry, to respond to injustice. But don't let it become a festering hostility and resentment that obscures the issue. And now I hate you no matter what you do afterwards. So anger is really to protect us from abuse.
Yeah.
And also to protect the innocent as well.
Yeah.
That sounds fair enough.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's interesting because it seems to me that to be in a position to use anger appropriately, you have to develop a good sense of how problems look versus the people and not conflict the two.
Yes.
Because we do get angry at people, but more so get angry at the problem, at the issue, and not the person.
And you know it is righteous anger, the healthy anger, if your anger is focused on the issue. Once my anger becomes focused on the person, it has already morphed into an unhealthy anger to outburst. So now, every time I see Joel, I'm angry. If Joel is singing, if he's preaching, if he's treating his son well, I'm angry because I've come now to hate you. And whatever you did to me is no longer the issue. But if I'm upset because, Joel was treating that boy badly, Joel spoke to his wife in a way no husband should speak to his wife. Or Joel spoke to me in a way that's very disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
Once my anger is focused on the issue, it is healthy anger. And it doesn't lead to outbursts. Again, some people think anger is outburst. Violent outburst. Sometimes anger may be a violent outburst. But that's in certain cases when it needs to be.
Yeah.
Who's our best example of outbursts of anger, of righteous anger? Can you think of somebody?
Jesus?
I'm thinking about Jesus. Which situation?
In the temple?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say all he did was lift up the whip and wave it. I don't think so. The Bible said he did what? He overthrew the tables and threw down the cage and said, get these things out of here, and picked up the whip. Even if he didn't hit anyone, he brandished it in a threatening manner that says, the whip is going to be for you. That was anger. That was a pure expression of anger. But it was what kind of anger?
Righteous.
That had to do with the issue of what they were doing to God's temple.
Do you think then maybe we struggle with that separation as people who get angry? We struggle with separating the issue from the person.
Our selfish, sinful human nature has done that. And this is why lessons like these, episodes like these, is to remind us, if you are angry at the person, be careful, your anger is morphed into an unhealthy anger. But if you are angry at the issue of what happened, what the person did, and then it is a healthy anger that says it has to be dealt with, then deal with it.
Yeah.
Be assertive. Call your husband, call your wife, call the children and say, look, we need to sit and speak about what happened last week at home or at church, whatever the case might be. So that once the issue is no longer there, what should go?
The anger as well.
So you know that if the issue is resolved, but the anger
is still in,
then you have already passed over into unhealthy anger, into that selfish anger that no Christian should have.
Yeah.
When that issue has been resolved, we've spoken about it, I've apologized. I gave you back the money I owed you and all of that, but you're still angry. You still see me and you bristle. Then it's bad. Let us suppose you came to America and a white man treated you badly, really unjustly, and you reacted with anger. Don't treat me like that. That's okay. But if after that, every white man becomes a devil, what has happened?
That anger has become sin now.
Yes.
become hate.
Yes. So every time you see your wife, every time you see your husband, that hostility is there. The issue is no longer the important thing. It has morphed. And that's when the apostle says, don't sin. Now, we have tried to resolve the conflict. We've negotiated, but nothing works. This is where forgiveness comes in. Because we all hurt others. We have all hurt others. Intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Every marriage, every family needs a healthy dose of forgiveness. Because not every conflict can be headed off at the beginning. Sometimes your husband may have really been unreasonable. Sometimes your wife may have really been unreasonable. Maybe he did commit adultery and it really hurt deeply that your husband was unfaithful or your wife. There's no negotiation here, right? Mm-hmm. There's no issue of compromise or any. It's a case of you have hurt me deeply. This is where forgiveness comes in. Forgiveness that says, I will pass over the offense. I will not hold you to the offense, to the law. I give you freedom to move on with your life. No, forgiveness is not forgetting. What did I say, Joel?
It's not forgetting, forgiveness.
Because you often hear people say forgive
and forget.
What do you think about that? I think we kept winding down now, right?
Yeah. Tricky, because I think people are making the case that don't keep calling back on this situation even as we move forward after forgiving somebody. Don't keep referring back to this situation as why you may be acting a certain way in the future. So that's why the persuasion is to forget. But forget in terms of our human condition, that in itself does not carry water, because we are just memory machines. These are memories that are deeply implanted in our lives, and we have now to shape ourselves and train ourselves around those memories.
That is true, what you said. But most people, when they hear forgive and forget, they believe it's amnesia. That forgiveness is amnesia. They try to forget. They pretend it didn't happen. That is not what forgiveness is about. It is not about trying to forget what happened, as if it never happened. For the Bible didn't say that God will forget our sin. People like to say that, into the sea of forgetfulness, but that's a song. God says, I will cast your sins to the bottom of the ocean, and I will remember them no more. He didn't say I will forget them. And remember them no more is not the opposite, is not the same as forgetting. Does it sound like semantics?
Yeah, a bit of gymnastics here.
All right, I'm glad you said that. You see, forgetting means I no longer have a recollection of what happens. It's somehow blocked from my memory, like you forgot the telephone number of the man who gave it to you last week. No one can forget emotional hurt like that in the first place. So what God is saying is, I will not remember your sin, meaning I will not actively hold it against you. You've heard situations, maybe you have gone through it. You're in church sitting down, perhaps, and somebody walks through the door. And the person sitting next to you says, you see that man? He left his wife, right, for his neighbor and ran away. So notice, the first thing that comes to mind is what the person did. And now she's poisoning your mind against this person because that's the uppermost. It doesn't matter that this man changed. This has been 20 years ago. Every time I see you, what you did
is what comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. So when God says, I will remember them no more, he's saying, I will not hold an active memory about what you did. Because to remember something means every time I see you, when I deal with you, it's always on the basis of the fact that you stole money from me last year. Or I lent you money and you didn't pay me back. So it means to remember your sin would mean every time I relate to you in the context of the offense. To remember it no more means I relate to you now post-offense and the restoration of the relationship. Because we can't forget. And the deeper the pain, the longer
the memory.
Yeah. Forgiveness takes time to, Joel. Forgiveness takes time. There's a feeling that forgiveness means, everything is okay. No. The deeper the pain, the longer the period of convalescence, of healing. It's like you break an arm. You can't use that arm tomorrow. It has to be put in a cast, away from use. Isn't that so? Until it gets back. And sometimes for years later, if you press on that arm too much, it hurts. That scar is there to remind you. My daughter got a damage playing softball for her university. She was sliding into base and snapped her tibia. They had to operate. About 32 stitches. She's well now. She walks well. But if you look at her leg, what do you see? Scars from the stitches. So even though she can walk and run on that leg and it doesn't hurt anymore, the scars are there to remind her what happened. And if you ask her now, she could tell you in every detail what happened. Forgiveness. You know you're healed in your forgiving when the hurt no longer brings pain. That makes sense? So I may choose to forgive you for what you did. It'll take a while for the pain to go away. That sensitivity, like that cut. It begins to heal, but if you touch it, sometimes it's ouch. You still feel it tender. But as the years go by and the tissue covers over and heals properly, you could touch it and it no longer hurts. That is when you know you are fully forgiven, that you have been healed in your forgiveness, because you could see that person and no longer feel the hurt. In relationships, forgiveness will always be necessary. And forgiveness is a deliberate decision I make not to hold the offense over you, to treasure you more than the offense. But let me caution this as we look to wind up. Forgiveness should lead and often leads to restoration, but sometimes it doesn't. Not everyone can be restored through forgiveness. So there's an active forgiveness where I talk to you, we make it up, and we are friends again. There's another forgiveness in which I simply let go of the offense, but there's no restoration. Could you give me an example where I can forgive someone, but we cannot be reconnected?
Somebody killed my family member.
Right.
If somebody maybe did violence against me of an extreme nature,
that doesn't mean I cannot be restored to you because you did something violent in the past. Of course, like my father, let us suppose I was a child who was abused by my father and he's dead. Can I forgive him?
Yes.
But he's dead, so there will be no restoration. Or I have an abusive husband or an abusive wife. I forgave her, but she continues to be abusive. There may not be an ability to have
a relationship.
My son is a drug addict, and every time I bring him into my home, he steals and stuff. So I forgive him, but now there's a barrier. Forgiveness doesn't mean I have to always bring you back close, because forgiveness also entails restoration, restitution, and a sense in the forgiven that I've been given a chance to prove myself again, worthy of your trust. So what I'm saying is, in that forgiveness in which sometimes there could be no restoration, there is a letting go, a forgetting the offense. In that forgiveness where I could restore you, there is a remembering of the good times, of your value to me, of how good it used to be. And I want to hold on to that. And you want to hold on to that. So in that case, I'm restoring. There's one forgiveness that is letting go of the offense. And I forget what you did in the sense that I'm not holding it in my mind. There's another forgiveness in which I remember Joel used to be such a good guy. He and I had such a good relationship. I would love to keep that going. So I remember you and the relationship, and I seek to restore. So I tell you, Joel, it is forgiven. I don't hold it against you anymore, because when I look at you, I don't see the person who offended me. I see the person who was my best friend. So that's the two faces of forgiveness: the active forgiveness of restoration and the passive forgiveness of simply letting go the offense, in which there is no possibility of restoration. And sometimes in a marriage, it comes to that. I tell people God hates divorce, But he is intelligent enough to know sometimes divorce is necessary. There are times when a relationship cannot be restored. There are some people who are so into what they're doing that they are unwilling to change. In times like these, all we can do is to let go of the hurt and the pain of the offense, but allow the person to go without seeking to restore. There are times when somebody might have done something really horrible, but we know they are sorry. We know that they really recognize they hurt us and they would like to be restored. That type of forgiveness says, yes, I will bring you back because I remember you were a good man, a good woman, a good friend. It may take some time because I'm hurt, like that leg that was broken. I can't walk on it the next day. So allow me if I need to be separated from you for a while. Allow me if I can't bring you home and chat with you like before. But given time, we may be able to once more enjoy that depth of fellowship, maybe even a marriage. A wife may decide, I can't be sexually active with you right now, knowing that you were with these other women. Give me time. And if somebody is truly repentant, they will
give you time.
So basically what we're saying is, in this life, there will always be conflict. We need to put it this way, we need to pray that prayer. God, grant me the strength to deal with those conflicts that I can't avoid. Humility to walk away from those that I can and should. And the wisdom to know the difference. If we could have that in a healthy manner, it actually builds us and binds us closer than before.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Let Us Go Deeper. Let Us Go Deeper is an independent ministry, and your support is critical to our operations. Please make any contributions that you can to patreon.com/LUGD. That is patreon.com/LUGD.